Hello and thank you for joining in on today's training. Heart & Solutions is a proud provider of CE eligible trainings for our counseling community. This training may be eligible for continuing education credit hours through either the National Board for Certified Counselors, provider number 7376, or the Association of Play Therapy, provider number 21-645. To obtain CE hours for today's training, be sure to follow the steps in the description below to find and take your quiz.
Welcome this morning. Thank you guys for joining me bright and early. We are going to spend some time today talking about play therapy via telehealth, techniques and troubleshooting. I am Dr. Colleen Grote. I am the Vice President in charge of therapy at Heart & Solutions. Heart & Solutions is a strength-based agency. We have offices across the state of Iowa, so hopefully many of you are familiar with us. Some of you may not be, so welcome. I am a licensed mental health counselor, a registered play therapist supervisor, and I'm really excited to be doing this training with all of you. Just a quick update for those of you that are accruing CEU hours towards your RPT, just a reminder that APT is accepting live webinars. There's more information about this on their website, but this is pulled directly from there. So if you are accruing those hours, just make sure that to be in compliance with that your cameras are on throughout the webinar. There will be a post test. In fact, it may have come to your email already today. I like to make things as simple as possible, but I will send that out as well. And then you guys can complete that post test and I will send out your CEUs certificates that way. So we are going to talk about several things today. We've got several objectives. We want to talk about success. We want to talk about how to be successful as a play therapist or somebody doing play therapy techniques via telehealth. We'll go over some interventions. Hopefully there's some on here that are new to you. Some may be ones that you're already utilizing or a fresh take on some that you're utilizing. Some of them may be completely new. And I will share with you 10 of my current favorites. And we'll also talk about how to explain play therapy via telehealth to parents, right? For those that work with children and families, we know it can be a challenge to explain play therapy in general to parents or caregivers sometimes. And we want to make sure that we are doing our best to explain to them how to make this transition to telehealth beneficial, successful, and just what that may look like for them, as well as how to address some barriers. So knowing that things are going to come up, again, even in the best situations can come up that make things difficult. So we'll go over what those unique barriers to telehealth may look like as well as balance and self-care, right? So how do we kind of blend this world together that isn't going anywhere at this point? And how do we manage our time for those that are seeing clients in the office, as well as those that are seeing clients via telehealth, and what that combination may look like. And we'll also do some self-care reflections. So as we get to towards the end of our training today, I've got a self-assessment that we'll do, and just kind of go through how are you taking care of yourself as well. Telemental health isn't new. I think that so many of us equate the transition to telehealth with COVID and the big push for that in early 2020. Telehealth's been around a lot longer than that, but it actually, hasn't been utilized a whole lot before that. So if we look at general statistics from the use of telehealth for mental health services prior to 2020, it was about 1% of services, right? The literature tells us that providers were really skeptical of what telehealth may look like for their clients. There was a lot of fears. There was a lot of anxiety over the loss of the relationship that would arise by moving to telehealth. And so while it was an option, it wasn't something that was utilized or really explored a whole lot in typical practice. However, as we know, with the pandemic, we really were forced into a situation of let's figure out this telehealth thing or we're not going to be able to serve our clients. And so from March to August of 2020, we saw a significant rise in telemental health services, as well as a rise in primary health services. But you'll notice there's some pretty big differences there, right? So when we think about visits to a primary care physician, going to a doctor's office, there are definitely some additional barriers, right? It's hard to get blood work done. It's hard to get vitals checked via telehealth. And so while mental health services went to about 40% utilization during 2020 via telehealth, primary care was at about 11%. What stands out to me, and obviously we don't have data on this year yet, but what stands out to me is the significant kind of maintenance levels that we saw with telehealth. So even as people started to transition back to in-person care and started having access again to being in office, telemental health services stayed at about 36% in that same time period the following year. And so what we've really started to learn is that there's a need for this outside of the pandemic. Telemental health services for children and families definitely is something that providers are wanting and needing and recognizing the need for, and clients are letting us know, hey, we want this, we need this. This is a service that we hope sticks around. And we're seeing that with insurance companies as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well, but being able to continue to access those services. So knowing that at this moment, this isn't going anywhere. And as much as it's not my favorite phrase, right, this is becoming our new normal. And so how do we find that balance? And how do we create success in this telehealth space? And there's several ways that we can do that. Some of the things that we want to do right off the bat is make sure that we are checking the things that we need. So I spoke briefly about insurance regulations, right? Those are changing constantly. So depending on where you work, who you work with, right? This may be your job to be constantly checking insurance regulations. We are really fortunate here to have a wonderful administrative and billing team that does so much of that work for us and is checking in quite frequently on, okay, what are they currently approving? What are different insurance plans approving as the COVID-19 pandemic stipulations run out, and we see those set to expire, and in some cases they already have expired, then it becomes looking at the individual insurance plans. And so just being mindful of what insurances do I accept? What insurances does my agency accept? What can I be talking to my clients about? Are there certain questions I should have them ask their insurance providers? Some of our insurance companies will reimburse for telemental health so long as there's a visual component. Some of them will reimburse so long as we're at least on the phone with them. So they all kind of have their different quirks, if you will. We also just got updates now that the location specifiers are changing, right? So just lots of little nuances to be mindful of. The last thing we ever want to do is tell a client, yep, we can do this via telehealth and be wrong about that. It's also not on this list, but kind of falls under that same category too, of being mindful, especially with insurance and licensure, of state guidelines, paying attention to the upcoming parity acts and what may or may not pass there. Again, with the COVID exemptions and exceptions, there are some states that will allow different state licensed providers to see clients via telehealth in a different state, but those are different literally for each and every state right now. And so we've seen, clients have gotten used to telehealth. They'll say, hey, I'm going on vacation. Can we meet during spring break? I'll be at my aunt's house in Florida. Well, maybe, right? Let me check the rules in Florida. Let me see if there's still policies in place due to COVID. Let me see where things are at. And so again, just being really mindful that there is not a one size fits all with what may be accepted by one insurance or one client situation and another. want to make sure that we're using secure technology, right? That we have HIPAA compliant servers. This goes for the paperwork that we're sending out, right? There are so many options when it comes to sending consent forms and releases of information. We want to make sure we're sending those via a HIPAA compliant server, and that the platform that we're meeting on is secure. So again, at the peak of the pandemic, there were a lot of exceptions made where, yes, you can meet with your clients via Zoom, you can meet with your clients via Google Meet. There was a recognition there. We want these clients to be getting services. It's important for them to be doing that. And so we will waive, in essence, some of the secure technology components. And as telehealth becomes more and more common and is again around for the long haul, we really see that push towards making sure, like, are you using a secure and HIPAA compliant platform, right? So paying attention, there's several options out there. Some are free, some are not. So just recognizing what your needs are, as well as what works for your clients. And then the little things, right, that seem so little but are so important. Having ample lighting, right? Making sure your clients can see you, making sure that you can see them, and that there's no distractions, right? So making sure that your space is set up. Even as we started today, I was like, oh, my chair is really loud, right? Like things like that as I move around and I fidget, as I know I will over the next couple of hours. Things as simple as, hey, my chair's a little squeaky, can really distract from that engagement and that therapeutic relationship. If any of you are starting in this telehealth world, and really looking into how do I prep this documentation? How do I set up these releases or these information packets? Anne Meehan has an amazing website. If you guys haven't checked it out, please do. Like, she has limitless amounts of resources and blog posts, but she has very graciously put together a whole packet of telehealth specific informed consents and documents for you to peruse free of charge, and implement into your own practice. So she is a wonderful resource. This is a link to one of her blog posts about teleplay, but she deserves all the credit in the world. She has put a ton of time and effort into not just telemental health and teleplay services, but has a ton of great work in that area. So if you are kind of just getting your feet wet or thinking about making that transition, or you're new to therapy in general and starting to work with clients via telehealth, she can be a great starting point for that kind of background paperwork. We want to be honest with our clients, right? Like, when we think about moving from in-office to meeting with our clients via telehealth, it's an adjustment, right? I think even 2 years in, it's an adjustment of, okay, right, what does this look like? I was doing a role play with an applicant for our agency not too long ago, and we were meeting virtually, and I said, okay, we're going to do this role play. And this applicant, bless their, they dove immediately into pretending that we were in the same space, right? I hadn't given any instruction that it was needed to be a telehealth session or an in-person session, right? And so even in that moment, it was like, oh, like there was still this innate desire to be in that space, even during this role play. And I'm not sure if that was because they thought that was the instruction, or I didn't do well enough explaining it, or if they were apprehensive about, a telehealth role play. And I'm not sure what grad schools are doing, right? It brought up a whole laundry list of questions for me of, are we practicing these in our graduate programs now? But it's an adjustment, right? And being honest with our clients. So if a client's been meeting in person and needs to move to telehealth for whatever reason, or if a client maybe was in services prior to the pandemic, discharged for a while and is coming back, right? And is now meeting with you via telehealth, just being completely upfront with them that this is an adjustment, right? I'm still, again, 2 years in, I'm still figuring this out. Those that work in my office with me know about every, 3 months, I feel like I rearranged my space and my desk at home because I'm like, I don't know if this background's working. I don't know if I'm too close or too far from where I want to be. So just being transparent with them, allowing your clients and their families to ask questions. We'll talk about showing them your space, right? But answering those questions, letting them know, yep, there can be times that this feels awkward, and that's okay. We want to make sure that we're being ethical, right? In all sense of that word. So following our code of ethics, making sure that we are acting just as we would in the office. But one additional element that comes when we're thinking about telehealth with child clients is making sure that their parents are available. And this is something we'll talk more about too when we get into some safety planning with telehealth and some additional barriers that may come up. But we're not babysitters, right? We're not babysitters in person in the office, right? I know at least in my own practice, I'm not letting parents drop child clients off and leave because if something happens, I want those parents to be accessible. I was at a training not too long ago, right? And they gave an example too of, hey, the session was great, but the parent ran an errand and the parent was rear-ended, right? And it was the last session of the day, and this provider was now waiting with this client until somebody could come back and get there, right? And that isn't what our job is. We shouldn't be put in that situation. Arguably, even more so with telehealth, we want to make sure that parents or caregivers, a trusted adult with an ROI, right, is available to start and end the session with the client, and in case anything comes up during the session. We talked about this a little bit, right? But we want to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success by setting the scene, right? We want to minimize distractions from our camera view, right? We don't want a lot going on in the background that shouldn't be going on in the background. We want to mimic our in-person workspace. So if my in-person office is, very lighthearted or a little bit messy or has a lot of color, like the last thing I want my clients to see is a completely different space. A lot of us had that at the start of the pandemic. It was makeshift. I can't tell you how many times I moved around where I was at. It became a game for one of my clients and I, like, what room are you in now? Because I didn't have a space set up yet. But as this becomes more of a constant for us and our clients, we really want to make sure that we have a consistent space for them that they are accustomed to seeing, just like they would be when they walk into our office. Maintaining eye contact, right? I know so many of us don't like watching ourselves, myself included. That Zoom fatigue is a real thing, but it can give us really great feedback as to what our clients are seeing, right? With child clients as well, it's really fun to let them pick their location, right? I went to a meeting yesterday. It wasn't even a training, it was a meeting with some other adults, and one of them had the craziest Zoom background, right? And like had done all sorts of weird stuff. And I just remember, like, it just made me laugh, right? It was totally unexpected. It was not exactly on par with what the meeting was about, but it was just fun, right? It just brought a looseness to that situation that was definitely appreciated for that 2-hour meeting. And clients can do the same thing, right? They want to go on an adventure that day. Do they want to change their Zoom background? Do they want to pick yours, right? So again, it gives them, I always call them bookends, right? The way that we start and end a session in the office, right? We may walk to the office a certain way. We may do something when we first get to the office. We can bookend our telehealth play therapy sessions as well, right? Where are we going to go today? Which background do you want, me to pick, or which one are you picking? And really giving them some control, just like they would have in the playroom about where they sit or where they go or what they do first. We need to be flexible, right? We can still be non-directive. We'll talk a little bit later about how sometimes we do have to be a little bit more directive than we may want to be via telehealth, just because of some of the barriers and limitations, but we can still be non-directive, right? We can still be flexible to what the client wants to do, where they want to meet, what they want to engage with. And technology fails can be used as opportunities. And again, we'll talk more about that when we talk about barriers as well. But when we think about setting ourselves up for success, I think it becomes really important to just expect technology failures. They're going to happen. And I think the best sessions for me are the ones where I am just going into it prepared for something to happen, right? Working with children, depending on the devices that they're on, right? I learned early on that if they're meeting with you from an iPhone and trying to do any sort of connection via an iPhone and somebody calls, they're going to hang up on you, right? Whether they deny the phone call or not, 90% of the time they hang up our meeting. right? They're going to drop the laptop. They're going to close the laptop. They're going to do all sorts of things. They're going to think they're being sneaky and playing a different game and close out of our session, right? Like just being ready for those technology failures. And again, we'll talk about that when we talk about barriers. I've got some tips and tricks for you that may or may not be helpful, but hopefully they will. And we want to be creative, right? So again, we talked about this with changing their background, doing something to engage them. We want to add a level of playfulness. Sitting here like this is fine for a training. Trying to engage a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old via play therapy, right? So we might show up wearing something really colorful, right? Or a fun hat or a silly. We might change our background like we talked about, having some toys that are easy to reach. The last thing I want to do is need something and not have it easily accessible. So making sure that I'm prepared for my sessions and that I can reach what I need without having to leave the site of my camera, just because that really does take away from that engagement with our clients anytime that we need to do that. So I have a lot of kid clients that, would come on and what are you wearing today? What are you doing with this? I own a lot of wigs, and I would have clients that would pick, I want you to wear this wig today. I have a 6-year-old daughter, right, who's obsessed with Descendants, right? And so one of my clients would say, next session, I want you to wear the blue wig, or I want you to wear Mal's wig or Evie's wig, right? Like letting them just kind of prep for that and have some fun with that, just again, helps with that level of engagement. Takes a little more energy on our part, right? As does telehealth in general, but it really can go a long ways. We wouldn't be doing telemental health if there weren't some benefits, right? If there wasn't some benefits to it post pandemic, I don't think we would still see those increased numbers and utilization of this. A lot of these came straight from NAMI. I tried to make things easy. I will share these slides with all of you following the training today as well. If I was more tech savvy and could talk and do things at the same time, I would do that now, but I will share them with you following our time together today. And I tried to make them as straightforward as possible. I don't like to go searching for links and resources. They are all listed at the end, but I tried to link as many as I could directly to where you'd want to find them. But we see these benefits following the pandemic, right? So even as life goes back to opening up and in-person sessions become an option for a lot of our providers and our clients, there's a lot to telehealth for children, especially, and adults, but for children that can just be so beneficial. Office visits can be intimidating. We just did an assessment with a family the other day who's been in services for a very long time. Lots of complex trauma, lots of complex medical issues as well. Doctors' offices, therapy offices are scary, right? This child has not had the world's best experiences, unfortunately, with medical providers and had some negative therapy experiences as well. And there was a lot of concern from their parents that, hey, we show up to this office, this child's going to shut down, right? Let's try telehealth. We haven't tried it yet. Let's see how it goes. Yes, we could get to the office if needed. We recognize that we may need to do that, but there's a comfort in this kiddo can be in their own space, and it's going to be a unique experience for them. So it opens the door to try something new. And technology is familiar. When we think about technology and access to technology, right, there's some really great literature, and we could go down a rabbit hole over digital natives and digital immigrants, right? And those born, I believe 85 is the cutoff, right? But those born post 1985 have never lived in a world without the internet accessible to them, right? And it's become more and more accessible over time. But I think about, my own experience with technology, and then my 6-year-old. And then my 2-year-old, right? My 2-year-old unlocked the iPad last night. Didn't know she could do that, right? Had no idea. But she did it all on her own and very proudly told me, I did it. That's just their world, right? It's familiar to them. They're way more comfortable with it. And so I think sometimes the reservations that we as adults have of like, this is awkward. This is weird. Like, what if it doesn't work? It's a non-issue for so many of the children that we see, even those that may not have direct access to those devices in their home. they have access to them at school, right? Again, my first grader's got an iPad and a laptop and to her disposal in the classroom. And so even telehealth from school, right? They have access to those devices and are really comfortable and much faster than I will ever be with them. It can be easy, right? And we will talk about this when we talk about self-care, because easier doesn't mean no boundaries, right? But it can increase our hours of availability. And so when I think about needing to travel to an office to meet with a client, right, I've got to take into account, what is my commute time? For some of us, that may be significant. I used to live about 45 minutes from my office, right? Thankfully, I don't anymore. But that commute time, right? If I don't need to drive there to see them and I can meet them from home, I may be able to open up a spot that I wouldn't otherwise have. We see that increased accessibility for our school age children as well, when we can talk to parents and say, hey, what is their free block, right? Or when is a class at school that it's okay if they are pulled from? What if we didn't need to pull them in time to drive them to the session? We just needed to take them for that 45 or 60 minutes. All of a sudden, it frees up time in that child's schedule to meet with us from a secure location at school and not have to transport back and forth. So it really can make some times of day accessible that maybe otherwise wouldn't be. We talked about it a little bit, but less travel, right? So I don't need to travel as much. We may be able to reach clients that we couldn't otherwise. When I think about so many of the services that we provide as different agencies across the state, right? And having to do those visits with kiddos that are in other school districts or in other counties, right? We want to be mindful of, hey, if I don't need to drive the 2 hours to go to that site to see them, I might be able to see them more often, right? And so maybe I do a combination of, I'm going to do, some sessions in person, but I am going to do some sessions via telehealth so that I can keep this contact consistent for that client. Less wait times, right? This is one of my maybe favorite benefits of telemental health. So as I see referrals come into our agency, somebody may wish for in-person services for their child, right? We get that request a lot of like, hey, I really want them to be in person. Wonderful. However, as many of you may have experienced as well, our referrals have skyrocketed, and the need for mental health services post-pandemic has really increased. And so a lot of our in-person providers are unfortunately on a wait list. And so to be able to talk to this family and say, yes, we will 100% put you on a wait list for in-person services. But in the meantime, we may have a provider who could start via telehealth if you'd like that option, and at least being able to offer them those services, right? And get those services started. And then some of them end up staying telehealth with that provider, or some of them do make the transition when it's available. And not just for therapy, right? We have BHIS services, and getting anybody who's done BHIS knows it can be difficult to get those assessments done and get those units requested. And so being able to do those via telehealth means that I don't need a mental health provider in this, in the location of that BHIS client. I can open that up to any of my providers across the state, get that assessment done, and then get that BHIS worker in the house so much faster. And so those less wait times just make me happy for our clients. One of my favorite benefits, as well as the accessibility, right? I think we tend to think of accessibility kind of naturally as like, oh, they're in a rural area, which is absolutely significant. And we do want to be able to open up those services to clients that are in rural areas. But it also increases accessibility for clients who may not be able to get to an office for other reasons, right? So they may be living with a disability. They may have a compromised immune system. We had a referral at one point with a client who had a severe medical condition and was still unable to walk. I'm thinking of some clients I've had in the past, who had some other presenting concerns, who couldn't leave the house, right? And that made those sessions really difficult. And this was years ago, but I'm going, oh, this had been a thing, right? Like we could have accessed this. So just increasing that accessibility. All right. So how do we take all of this, right? All of these things that we know can be beneficial, all of these things that can be so helpful, and explain to parents why we should do this, right? And there's a lot of pieces to this, right? So one of them we talked a little bit about earlier is that paperwork piece. So how do we get them that documentation? When the pandemic first hit, right? It was like, I don't know, like we don't have a system for, let me try and figure this out. We were like paper mailing things. We were asking them to sign it, or agree to sign it when they could come in. We were taking verbal consents, right? It was a little, panic's the wrong word, right? But highly improvised of figuring out what to do. And so 2 years in, right, it's like, okay, we've got a system. It's still evolving a little bit as systems do, but making sure that we have ways that clients can easily sign that paperwork, and recognizing that even when we're providing telemental health services, some families may have limited access to those systems. And so making sure we're giving them a way to sign that document without putting them out, right? I think, again, at the beginning, I think back to like, well, we could send it and have them print it and scan it. And it was like, that's not going to work, right? Like people say that's not a thing. And so upgrading to, again, those HIPAA compliant options of those documentation servers and signers, and just being mindful of that. We also want to let parents know, hey, this is safe and secure. When I start with somebody, my webcam comes off of my computer, right? And so I'll take it and I'll show them the space. I want them to see, yes, that door is closed, but there isn't another door, right? And there's a wall here. And I give them an office tour of the space I'm going to be meeting with their child in. And I think it talks about it later too, but I like them to give me a tour of their space as well. I like to see where that client's at, because it's equally as important for that client to feel safe and secure in their spot. And I'm going to talk to parents and say, hey, yes, like we are meeting via technology, and technology doesn't always work. And so let's come up with a plan now. Let's be prepared for what that's going to look like. And I've got those safety plans written out for you in a couple slides. But we're gonna normalize that from the get-go, right? So yep, there may be pieces of this that don't work, and we're gonna problem solve those ahead of time. We can let parents know that they can help their children be successful. So when they're thinking about, hey, how do I explain this thing, right? Play therapy in general may be new for some of these children. Play therapy via telehealth may be new for some of these children. So when a client's parent calls and I take that initial phone call, right, I'm talking to them about like, hey, here's what we can do to make sure that this appointment is successful. First and foremost, please let them know they're going to meet with me, right? And it's crazy, but it still happens. I just had an assessment last week where mom came and client came in, and client was 9, I believe, and was like, what are we doing? Who are you? What's this about? I don't know anything about this, right? Like, not my favorite way to start an assessment. And so letting parents know, yes, we'll talk about play therapy and what it is, but let's also give those kids a heads up that they're going to be meeting somebody and what that may look like. We want to listen to those children's questions. We want parents to listen to their questions, right? Which goes hand in hand with, you need to let them know they're going to have an appointment so that they have time to ask questions about that. It's really hard to be able to prepare and answer their concerns if they didn't have time to prepare concerns. And kiddos' questions, you guys know, they're fun, right? Like some of them are super, super serious. Some of them are not. And so giving them a chance to ask questions, right? And figure out who you are and what this looks like and all of the things. And we want to make sure, like the little things too, right? Like, do you have a solid internet connection? If you're not sure, let's test it out beforehand, right? Let's make sure I've got your phone number in case you don't, so that we can connect right away via phone and make a plan there. And pick a device your child's familiar with, right? Like I talked about, kids are super tech savvy. But the last thing I prefer, right? I had a mom, a wonderful parent, but she had decided kind of last minute, well, I'll just give her my work laptop, right? That'll be, in her mind, that connection was going to be more secure. This child spent the whole session terrified that mom's work laptop was going to get broken or hurt, and she didn't know what buttons to push. It was like, okay, well, if we had just set her up on her tablet, right, it would have been a non-issue. She knew exactly what to push and go, and if it fell over, nothing was going to happen to it. And so talking them through what device they'll be using and letting them get familiar with that before the session. And trying to limit other activities, right? So again, giving those children some prep work of they may be meeting with me in their bedroom, they may be meeting with me in the playroom, wherever that space may be, but letting them know that this is a special time to meet with their provider, and that we're not going to be doing other activities to the best that we can limit that, right? It's not foolproof, but giving them a heads up of that we're going to get to do lots of fun things and that we're going to have plenty to do, that we don't need to bring in our entire toy box full of noise-making toys to the session. And if possible, right, I let parents know, let's give them a space that's safe and comfortable, but maybe isn't the playroom, right? Or maybe isn't their bedroom if their bedroom is their playroom. We want them to have a place that there's not quite so many temptations if we can avoid it. I get asked a lot, right, by parents of like, is this going to work, right? Like, what's the point? This is done, right? Like, is this even going to work? And I know I mentioned earlier, like, there isn't a ton of providers that were super into doing telemental health before they had to at the start of 2020. But there were providers that have been, and there are long-term studies that show us that it's comparable with in-person work, that when we put the work in, when our clients put the work in, we definitely can see effective, successful work via telemental health. And we need to trust that process. I think it's like a lot of other things. If I go into any session, in person or not, and think, nah, right, there's nothing here, this isn't going to work, it's not going to work. And so trusting ourselves, trusting our clients that this process can be effective. When we talk to providers, when we talk to clients, the majority of them still prefer in-person to telehealth, but they prefer telehealth to phone, right? And so we do what we can with where we're at. And so there may be times that, yes, we would love to meet in person, but we can't. And so we know that telehealth can be just as effective. And again, trusting that process and letting parents know, yep, we absolutely can do this. Is it 100% like the best option for everybody? No, absolutely not. But in the right situations and the right circumstances, yes, there's nothing that says it's ineffective as a treatment modality. Okay, what do kids need, right? Again, that prep work, that setting them up, they need somewhere quiet, right? They need privacy, minimal distractions, right? I worked with this one adolescent for a long time, and luckily I had really great rapport with her. We had met in person for years before switching to telehealth. That minimal distractions, right? I would meet with this girl, she's about 13, after school every day, which was fine. We'd come home, but she would always have me on her phone. We'd connect via her phone, and she would always make her after school snack, right? Which would then turn into like talking with other family members that were in the house, that would then turn into having a conversation about what they were going to do for dinner, right? And it was like, by the time we could get her to a quiet space, which was established and set up and secure, we were almost out of time, right? So we really had to kind of work with her and parents to get her in a better routine of like, let's start the session a little bit later so that she could do those things and be in her space. We want them to have access to toys or art supplies. We want to be really mindful of what those toys or art supplies are. On that website I linked earlier by Amy Meehan, again, I don't know her. I wish I did. Somebody who does, like, but I'll give her all the props in the world. She put together like essentially a play therapy portable bucket that she sent to all of her clients. And she has more funds than I do to do that. But it's got some great resources as to what kind of things may be beneficial for clients to have access to. And so being able to improvise and utilize her list and what she did for those clients, it's really great to work with parents to have them set up a bucket that is for therapy time only, right? So we've got some crayons in there, some markers in there, some paper in there, some toys, but we're not playing with those all week long. We're not getting those out when our friends are over. We're not playing with those on the weekend. It's something that parents and caregivers can keep in a safe location and get out specific for therapy. Just like when they come into our office, there's toys in our office that they're only getting during that therapy time. We want to make sure that they've got access to a device with a camera and a microphone and a camera angle that shows us as much of them as possible, right? So again, like this format that I'm in with all of you is great for a training, right? You don't need the rest of my body. You don't need to see me playing. But when I'm working with children, right, the best case scenario is that I take my camera and I move it so that I can sit on the floor so that they can see all of me. It lets them know and models for them what I'd like to see from them, right? So there's always kind of 5 minutes at the start of every session that might be a little bit awkward, right? It might sound like you're getting ready for shooting a movie, right? Testing. But we want to make sure we can see that child as much as possible when they're moving around the room. We want to see what their body language is doing. I want to see where they're at. And this kind of typical Zoom screen isn't the best for that. Sometimes it's all we have and we'll make it work if we have to. But if we can see more of them and they can see more of us, even better. So what do parents do, right? I want you to stay close. We talked about that earlier. Like, please don't leave them home alone. The same adolescent who used to make after school snacks quite frequently one time decided, and she had some developmental delays, nothing, super significant, but enough that yes, while chronologically one might argue like, oh, she would be okay at home. She was not. And she had great caregivers and they were home. But during one of our Zoom sessions, she saw something outside that piqued her interest. And she was in a basement room and crawled out the egress window. And all I heard her say was, I'm going outside. Right. So I knew this client, I knew the rapport. I gave her a safe amount of time and she did return to our session back through that same window, right? But had she not, or had I heard more concerning sounds, I needed to make sure that there was a parent or caregiver accessible, right? So making sure that they are around and that they have access to a cell phone and that I have the number to that cell phone, right? So letting them know, hey, here, again, I've got a slide about safety planning, but letting them know, hey, I'm going to call you, right? And if I call you, you got to answer because something's going on, right? And I need you around in that safe space because anything can happen, right? Just like in our playroom, like we aim for safety. We want them to be safe, but it takes one slip, and they fall off a chair or they do something. And so we want those parents and caregivers to be around. Boundaries early can be really, really important and just make them non-negotiables, right? So again, when I'm setting up that first appointment or that second appointment, I'm letting them know, like, this is the expectation. So safety planning, right? I've mentioned it a lot today, but these are things, again, when we're in the office, I think safety planning is something that, yes, we go over in our informed consent. We ask that those caregivers stay in the waiting room. But when we're thinking about doing play therapy via telehealth, right, there's that added level of, I'm not right there if something happens. And one of the flexibilities and benefits of telehealth is that it's accessible, right? So I've had clients who will say, hey, this week I'm, mom and dad are out of town, so I'm going to stay at my aunt's house, right? So I'm going to do telehealth for my aunt's house. Okay, I do all my work, I get an ROI for the aunt's house, and then I realize I don't have aunt's phone number easily accessible, or I don't know aunt's address, right? Or all of those things that are less of an issue if that same aunt was sitting in my waiting room in the office. So when we think about safety planning, we want to think about all of those what ifs. So we want to make sure that caregivers are present. I've said it 100 times because it's important, right? Like, we want them to be there. We want to make sure that they have a phone that is with them during the appointment and that they can answer, right? I've had caregivers who, especially like over summertime and things when kids are home, are working during that time. Absolutely. That's fine, right? Kid is in their bedroom doing their session. Like, I don't expect you to sit and do nothing for that hour, but you do need to have access to a phone that you can answer if I call you, which means I also need to know an updated phone number, right? And so we need to be really mindful that we're checking in that whatever phone number we have on file is the accurate phone number. as well as their address, right? So if something happens and I can't reach a parent, or something happens to this client and I need to call 911, right? It's one of those things that we hope never happens, but it could. We need to make sure we have an accurate, updated address. So being really mindful, especially with our telemental health clients, that we have that information in case the worst situation happens, are things that, again, kind of at the start of telehealth, I wasn't thinking a whole lot about, right? It was like, oh, how do I engage this kid? How do I do therapy? But we can't do play therapy effectively if we aren't being safe about what ifs. So we'll get all of those pieces in place, right? And once we have all of those pieces in place, then we can get into, okay, what are we doing, right? What do play therapy interventions look like via telehealth? And this is where I'm going to cross my fingers for the next 10 or so slides and hope that all of my technology works. And if it doesn't, we're going to pretend that it was really intentional to model to you what to do if it doesn't. But I am really hopeful. I've got a couple videos over the next couple slides that I want to show you of some of these interventions, because they do a great job demonstrating them. One of them got me really excited, and 2 years in, I don't know how I hadn't thought of this or stumbled across it. So again, I hope some of these are new for you as well. If any of you are using these interventions, have used these interventions, or a spin on these interventions, please feel free, unmute yourself. I get tired of listening to myself after so long. So if there's something that you want to add about anything in this presentation, but these slides as well, please let me know. Again, I tried to link all of them, for the most, anything that kind of needed a link on these slides, and I will send them out to you so that you can go direct to these websites, check them out. There's lots more where these came from, but we'll just kind of go through kind of some start to finish interventions, right? So they're not in any particular order, except a few at the beginning are a little more rapport building, and I've got some termination activities for you towards the end as well. On here is really straightforward, really simple and to the point, but it's just a game called I Can See You, right? And this allows children who are unfamiliar with telehealth, or maybe, have maybe did a little bit of online schooling, but it lets them know that this is in real time, right? That I can see you, that I know what you're doing, that you can see me. So it's kind of like a version of Simon Says, right? Except we're not giving any instruction, but you can take turns doing silly actions, right? So you may cover your eyes, right? And let the client know, I can see you covering your eyes, right? I can see you touching your nose, right? And it just is a way to get them to recognize, again, that this is in real time, that as you move your body, as you talk, as they move their body and they talk, that you can see them. And so sometimes kids get really silly with it, right? They might go hide, which is why we want the big full screen camera view, right? But I can see you hiding under your bed, right? I can see you throwing your stuffed animals. And so I really just like this game as a rapport building activity at the beginning, to introduce them to the concepts of what play therapy is going to feel like via telehealth, right? That we're going to move our bodies at the same time. We're going to do things together. We're going to learn from each other. And that, again, just kind of sets the scene for this isn't delayed. And that if you do something, right? If you do something that you think is a little naughty, I'm going to see that too, right? If you do something silly, I'm going to see that too. It also can help us set the boundaries of their camera angle, right? So with some of my kids, they may say, can you see this, right? Or what am I doing now? And they may run out of view, and I might say, oh, I can't see you over there, right? I wonder where you're at. I can't see you. I can't see what you're doing. I really want to see what you're doing. I wonder where you could move so that I could see what you're doing, right? And I can help kind of navigate them in the room. And I might start to use some landmarks, right? So in this room here, right, I'm pretty cut off. I've got a wall right here. I can't go too far. But if I'm on the other side of that door, I might say, oh, I wonder if I could see you if you were in front of the door, right? And see if they'll jump over for me. So again, I can start to map out. It also is a nice redirection later. Sometimes kids will get really excited about something and they'll start trying to show me something, especially if they're in their bedrooms, right? Kids like to show their artwork and things. But it's a nice redirect to say, oh, remember our I can see you game, right? I can't see you over there. Let's find where I can see you. So good rapport building, good introductory option. And it lets them see my space too, right? As I move around and they can copy my actions and they can see what my office looks like as well. Dr. Karen Fried, again, don't know her, wish I did. She sounds really awesome, but she did a ton of just amazing work at the height of the pandemic of all these things that I think so many of us play therapists had in our brains of like, oh, it would be really cool if that worked. I've got 2 of her interventions on here. And she took the time to put them together. So I'm going to see if this will work for us. Those of you that have had a training before will know that I hate that I can't see what I'm sharing on Zoom. Did that work? Can you guys see my puppet stage? Awesome. Okay. So this is a way, you can screen share with clients, but they have a choice over here of some puppets that they can pick from, right? So there's this cool dinosaur and they can select it and put it over on their stage. They can make them bigger or smaller. It's nothing crazy animated, right? But then they can, right? So if they want to put on a puppet show, the puppets can jump, they can hit, they can hug, right? So if we grab a second one, oops, and put that over here, they can face each other, oops, to hug each other. Although I think the dinosaur always looks like he's yelling, but they can be mad, right? So they can do all sorts of things. And so again, it gives an option for those clients to put on a puppet show with a variety of puppets and characters and things that they might be doing in your office. But to do that virtually, there's also some backgrounds that they can choose from, so they can set their stage there, and they can narrate that out loud. So lots of options, lots of fun things. So a really great resource, again, just to be able to get the puppets out the same way they would in the office. That one. And like I said, we'll go over some other things that Dr. Fried put together, but there's also an online course about how to use puppets. So if puppets aren't something currently in your repertoire and you want to increase your knowledge there's some good links there. I'm going to get really giddy about this one, you guys. This is my favorite intervention on this list. And if you have seen it, like, please just pretend to be excited with me, or like, don't make me feel super old or out of touch. I know green screens are a thing. Until I was putting this training together, like, it had not crossed my brain about what this could do for play therapy. And I think it's going to make, Zoom is now going to make me share my entire screen. Okay, I need the sound to work. So we're going to play a little bit with this one. Zoom updated their rules about screen sharing. So I'm going to click it and hope. If not, we'll pause it and we'll get it so that you guys can hear this video because it's phenomenal.
Hi, Amy Nelson here, and I just wanted to show you a few ways that I use my green screen to engage preschoolers in social emotional learning. So the background you're actually seeing behind me right now is a green screen. In fact, let me show you, because when I lift it up, I have another screen underneath, but I use my green screen right on top so that I can project any virtual image I want to have on there. So let me show you just a few ways that I teach social emotional skills to preschoolers using this green screen. I use this activity for up and down regulation, and this is a simple one that any kid at home can do. If they've got a grown-up, you might recognize this as a TheraPlay activity. They can put the grown-up, can put the child right on their lap, and they can do this activity together. But if you're engaging just the child virtually, then you can use this as well, or you can use this again as a whole class activity also. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Oh, look, you see out there? There's a shark. We have to row super fast. Are you ready? Buckle up. Here we go. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Whew, we made it past the shark. But be very quiet. Fish are sleeping. We have to row super slow and very quietly. Are you ready? Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. One background, very simple. Here's another activity I use with the same background. Let's get my fishing pole. Hey guys, are you ready to go fishing? Let's see what kind of fish we can find. I got one. Oh, hey, check it out. How do you think that fish is feeling? You're right. It's happy. You got it. Let's see if we can catch another one. Ready? I got another one. Oh, this is a big one. Hold on. Hey, how do you think that fish is feeling? You're right. He's mad. How did you know he was mad? I could see. You got it right. He's mad. Do one more. Are you ready? Help me reel it in. Reel it in with me. Here we go. Oh, this is a tricky one. Check this out. How is that fish feeling? You're right. He's silly. He's a silly fish. If he's feeling silly, but he has to calm his body so he can get ready to learn, what is something he could do to be calm? You got it. He could take some deep breaths. Let's practice our deep breaths. Are you ready? I have an even better idea. Let's practice our deep breaths with our birthday cake. Can you smell that? Do you think it's chocolate or vanilla? You like chocolate too? Okay. Smell with your nose. Now blow, blow, blow. You did it. Try again. Smell and blow. Nice job. Again. Wow. 2 more to go. And one more time. Smell and blow. Nice job. You blew out all the candles in the birthday cake. Hey, do you want a bite? Let me grab a bite for you. You go. You want some too? I can share with my friends. You know, another friend that likes to share is my dinosaur friend. He has a hankering for some feelings. So let's see if you can guess what feelings he wants to eat today. What do you think this one is? You're right. It's happy. How did you know? What is something that makes you feel happy? Okay, let's see if Dino will eat my happy feeling. Are you ready? Woo! He ate it all up just like that. What about this one? You're right. This feeling is scared. If he was scared, what could he do? You're right. Everybody gets scared sometimes. Do you think it's kind of scary that I'm going to feed this dinosaur? Let's see if I can do it. He ate it up. One more. How about this one? Mad. You're right. He's mad. When's the last time you felt mad? Let's see if this hungry dinosaur will eat this feeling. Ready? He did it. Yes. You guys are great. Hi, I'm here today with my pirate friend. Hello, boys and girls. We are going to see what's in his treasure chest. Hey, pirate, do you have some cool things in your treasure chest we can check out? Oh, you betty. If you find the treasure, you'll get to keep it even. Are you ready? Let's see what he has in our treasure chest. This one says, say hello with a silly voice. I'll go first and you can go next. Ready? Hello. Your turn. You got it. You ready to see what's next? This one says, give an elbow bump. Are you ready? Get your elbows up, bump, bump, and we can bump our elbows together. Yeah, you got it. Thanks for playing. And those are just a few ways that I use my green screen to engage small children in social emotional learning activities. There are lots of other activities that I use. These are just a few that I wanted to pull out and show you this morning. And really, the sky's the limit when you think of being creative and accommodating to your students' needs. So if you have any questions, you can email me at info@emotionalmilestones.com. Thanks.
So she's not a play therapist. I believe she just like speech language pathology stuff, but I don't know, you guys, it like changed my world. I was like, I am underperforming as a play therapist by not having a green screen. So super awesome stuff there. Those familiar with Lynn Louise Wonders, her website, Whole Child Counseling, also is where I found this video from, but has some links on some access to green screen users. So there's like Facebook pages now for individuals that are utilizing green screen for different, not just play therapy, but different telemental health and therapy things, again, for OT and speech. But there's some really great resources there. I tried to link, she lists the website where that particular green screen was purchased. I wasn't smart enough to figure it out. The link works and it takes me to a really cool website, but I'm not sure if they're no longer selling those green screens. The way she fed the dinosaur is the green screen had a pocket in it. But yeah, really cool. Lots of great access there. And like I said, in 2 years, it had never crossed my mind. And I then realized I really needed to step up my game. So really like that one. Okay. The paper plate activity takes our level of technology need way back down the chart. So we go from really amazing green screen and technology use to literally all you need is a paper plate. Not even, right? I was looking around my room. I didn't bring a paper plate down. You could grab anything, right? A cardboard box, something a little sturdier than a piece of paper, because I want to be able to put stuff on it. But for those kiddos that we work with that are anxious or worried, we can have them walk around their room, their house, and put things on the plate. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll link those specifically to what those worries are, right? So it sounds like you have a lot of worries on your brain today. I wonder if we can find some things, right? And they can be random things, or if they want to, I've got a pile of pens sitting here, right? Okay, so I heard you say you're worried about your math test today. Let's put on your paper plate, right? So here's my worry about math, right? And I heard you're worried because your sister gets to go to grandma's house today and you don't. Here's your worry about your sister, right? And we can keep going through all of those worries, right? And have them hold it. Most kids after a little bit be like, this is heavy, right? I don't want to. I'm going to set it down, right? If they don't, if they are your super strong, right, kid who refuses to give up about anything, then we can say, wow, you've been holding that a long time. I bet those worries are getting really heavy. I wonder if there's anything else in your brain right now. Are there any other worry thoughts? Or sometimes I'll just transition to, are there any other thoughts in general, right? Because sometimes I have lots of worries, but I'm also thinking about my art show is tonight and I'm excited for my art show, but I wonder if mom's going to be on time. Right? Oh, that sounds like a worry, right? You're worried mom might, right? And we'll keep adding to that until it gets so heavy and they're tired of holding it up. And I like that they hold it up so I can see it, right? This is an adaptation. It's not my adaptation, but it's an adaptation I used to in my office would do, and maybe where kids would even like put things in their pockets, right? And we would talk about how heavy their pockets were and how hard it is to walk around. Depending on their camera, I may not be able to see their pockets, or they might sit down and I might not be able to tell they're sitting down. So I like them holding up the paper plate so that I can see that they're holding those worries. because then we can really talk about how hard it is to hold their worries in, and how difficult that can be. So we can discuss what coping skills are working and what their supports are. Animal feelings is really similar to towards the end of that green screen video, right? She was pulling out of the treasure chest and she said, oh, this one says, say hello in a silly voice. This one can be movement. So for my kids that need a lot of wiggles to get out, I can make this a movement intervention. For those that don't, we can do this as an art intervention. But we'll start by coming up with a list of 6 animals and 6 feelings, right? And if I've got dice, great. If I don't, there's some wonderful random dice generators, and we'll roll the dice and we'll act out our combination, right? So I might have to be a sad shark, right? And I might have to act that out, or I might draw a sad shark, right? So I really like this one. Again, I can change that level of engagement. I can change the directions of this activity based on what my client needs that day. So if we need to do some emotional regulation and down regulate a little bit, we might do art, right? And we might practice taking our breaths and drawing our animals. If we need to get some of those gross motor skills going and we need to be moving around, this is a great opportunity to appropriately make those big body gestures, right? The other thing on here, and I'm gonna do a little bit of impromptu work, which is always a little bit dangerous in a training. But I'm gonna see if I can find, I had a client one time who was, I'm not even sure what, as play therapists, as you guys know, we don't always know the roots of where concerns come from or what's going on behind the scenes with our clients. But she was very afraid. I believe shark is in my brain because it's on this slide. It may or may not be a shark, but she was very concerned that there was a shark living in her bed. And we were doing telehealth from her bedroom. Right. And she was really, really concerned that there was a shark in her bed and she didn't know where it was. It was like, okay, how do we do this? Right. And so, sometimes I'll go down a rabbit hole, kid, like, what if there is, right? Your bed. I wonder if it's a nice shark, right? And she's like, I don't know. I can't see it. I can't find it. So if you go, I have an iPhone. Honestly, I don't know if it works on Android. So full disclosure there. But if you go on your iPhone and you Google a variety of animals, you can pull them up in 3D. So you have to do it through the Google app. I'm going to see if this one will open up for me. But what I was able to do, right, and I'm really hoping this will work because now I'm excited to talk about it, is we Googled shark, right? And we said, okay, there's this shark. And I said, oh, let's put the shark right there. Let's talk to him, right? Let's find this shark. So hopefully this one will open up for me. And I was able to, on my phone for her, here we go, open up this shark. Let's see. So we go to the Google app, we Google, for the sake of this one, shark. So I'll kind of walk you guys through if you can see. So you Google the animal, and then there's an option that says view in 3D. And it will let you put it in your space. So you move your phone around the room. And I had her mom bring in her phone. And I said, okay, I'm going to walk you through how to do this. And we could eventually get to a point where I took the shark, I screenshotted it. This one, my lighting, speaking of lighting, is terrible. But I screenshotted it for her and we talked about, I don't know if this is going to let me see, you can see the shark, right? And you can do better screenshots. But I had her screenshot it in her bed, right? And we put it in her bed and we started talking to this shark and we named this shark and we talked about how nice this shark was and we petted the shark, and on the phone, you can move the shark all around. So we really started allowing her to gain mastery of this shark that had appeared as a worry seemingly for an unidentified reason. And we did that for weeks and the shark kept coming back. But again, just getting creative with our technology and our access to things. So Animal feelings, accessing animals via Google. This is another one by Dr. Fried. So very similar to the puppet show, just links to her website. And if you need to access just a very standard dollhouse and some very standard figures, there's lots of options so they can hang artwork and set up the house however they want to, move things around, they can flip them. So just again, a way to interact on a dollhouse with those clients. So some options there. Another great dollhouse app, although it's now available via Google Play. It used to not. So if anybody is utilizing Google Play, there's a great dollhouse app called My Play Home. It is my favorite. And I've been using that one pre-telehealth, when I used to see some kiddos outside of my office in school-based settings and other places. Very similar to this setup by Dr. Fried, but much more animated. It's not narrated. The characters don't have voices. They still need to do all of that manipulation, but it is an amazing app with lots of add-ons. So it has a doctor's office, a school, a shopping mall, and it is wonderful. One of my favorites. I haven't utilized it via telehealth because it used to be only available on an iPhone app, which is a little bit difficult, obviously. I have not tried it on Google Play yet, but it is now available there. So for my younger kiddos, right, some PBS is always a wonderful source of information, but there's some really great interactive feeling games. And so lots of links there. I'll show you a brief clip of this one because I thought this one was really cute. Lots of games they can play. So Daniel Tiger is a favorite in our house.
Everyone has feelings. Let's play a game together and guess the feelings.
I'll go first and show you how we play. Okay, guess what feeling this is? Oh, I wonder what that feeling is. I wonder what feeling that is. That looks like brave. This is how I look when I feel brave.
Which I think is a little tough.
With a little help, you can be brave. With a little.
So I think brave is a little bit of a tough one, but I like that one. So they go through the feelings, they get to take a turn. Lots of other games there as well, lots of different characters, but a way to get them involved in talking about those feelings as well. The Rock and the Play-Doh came from Eliza Kate, and I love this intervention as well. So again, something you'd have to do a little bit of prep work with the clients with, and making sure they have some sort of clay or Play-Doh and some rocks or stones prior to the session. But I like it because it really connects some of those things that we can get so stuck on, right? So it asks them to take the rock in their hand, squeeze it as hard. Oh, can you bend it? Can you break it, right? Let's roll it up. Let's squish it, right? Can we change that rock? And we can try all of our might, right, to change that rock. And that's not changing, huh? That rock isn't squishing or bending or rolling. Okay, now let's get our Play-Doh, right? And let's squeeze it as hard as we can. Let's bend it and roll it. This says rock here. It should say Play-Doh, right? But we can change that Play-Doh, right? We can make that Play-Doh anything we want it to be. I wonder what you want to make your Play-Doh, right? Should we make it a ball or a snake? So we can talk about some of those things that make us feel worried or mad or anxious or scared. And so then we can start to talk about those things of, are those a rock, right? Are those parts of the situation that can't be changed, right? We can't control what's happening there. If anybody's ever utilized the book Wilma Jean the Worry Machine, right? It makes me think of when they go through and think about her worries that can't be changed, right? So the things she can't control. She can't control the weather, right? But what are the things that can be changed? What are the things we can control? What are our Play-Dohs, right? And so thinking about what are the Play-Dohs in your lives? What are the rocks? And helping, especially some of our older kids, right, recognize the pieces that they can control and the parts that they can't. Match games, these are pretty straightforward. There's a couple different links here, pairs and match the memory. You can make your own if you are so inclined, but there are some pre-made ones as well. My daughter test drove some of these for me, but she really enjoyed the Disney match game. Pretty basic, right? It's nothing crazy, but you can go through and take turns finding a feeling and an emotion, right? I promise I didn't cheat. I didn't, but they can go through and talk about the matches that they find, right? And my daughter got really mad because she thought this one looked sad, but they have it matched as sick, right? But we talked about what parts of that, I wonder what parts of that look sad to you, right? And well, it looks like she's crying, right? And so we were able to talk through what may look like one feeling, what may be two feelings, right? Or she might be sad because she's sick, right? So we kind of were able to open up a discussion intentionally there just by the images that were selected. So they can go through and pick those. You can change the number of matches. Some of the games go up to like 32 matches. So it's a giant screen. If you've got younger kids, we can do smaller sets. So another great interactive game there. And then we don't need to watch this video. I think it's about 5 minutes long, but this is a termination activity. The link is there. She does a really great job modeling what that termination activity via telehealth would look like. But what she does is she gives her client here, her wonderful stand-in client, some instructions where they're going to trace their hand on paper and then make a bigger hand to represent the provider. And they can go through on each hand and write words that describe themselves and describe the therapist. And the therapist is simultaneously doing the same thing. So she's creating an image of her hand and a smaller representation of her client's hand, and putting down words that describe her client. And then on the outside, they're writing down memories from their time together in therapy. And so in this example, I believe the client here, talks about that time that you told me it wasn't my fault that my parents got divorced. Right. Or that's, and so is able to go through, they give some other funny examples of some things that happened in session. And so a great way for this client to now have a tangible piece of that therapeutic relationship as the session comes to an end, and really reflect on their time together. So termination via telehealth is something I get asked about a lot, right? Like, termination in office is hard enough. It's emotionally charged enough. How do we make sure that we are giving adequate time and attention and really doing justice for our clients as we think about termination? And this activity really stood out to me as a way that, yes, there's something representative now of that therapeutic relationship that the client can create and process through together, and really reflect on that time, whether that time was all telehealth or not. Really just liked this activity as well for that. All right, we are getting there, guys. We're getting there. So we've got all these great interventions, right? And of course, they're all going to go perfectly, right? There's never going to be any glitches. Everything's going to go wonderfully. Our clients are going to do exactly what we expect them to do all of the time. I wish. I totally wish. No, I don't. It would be way more boring, right? if that happened. But we've got some barriers, right? Telehealth is not, it's not a perfect system. Again, we're still learning. And even if we had learned all, right? It's not a perfect system. There's definitely still some things we've got to work through. And really, again, it's on us as providers to problem solve these the best we can ahead of time, right? So going in with an open attitude of things might happen. How can we best prepare ourselves for those things and still be prepared for the unexpected, right? Again, my client who took a nature walk out the egress window, right, was not on my list of things I was going to have to plan for during a telehealth session. I've had some other ones that it's like, I had a client one time who was in her bedroom, right? Again, I had great rapport with this client, but started undressing, right? She had sports, and it was like, stop, right? We're not going to do that. And she wasn't doing it as a sexualized behavior. She was getting ready to go to whatever practice she had that night and just kind of instinctively was like, this is no big deal, right? Like, and so it's like, how do I make sure I'm safe now as a provider, right? And documenting what happened in case she tells somebody later that she started changing, and how do I word that, and how do I stop her, and how to, so just those things that it's like, we don't know what's going to happen when we get invited into a client's home and a client's space, and we do the best that we can by preparing ourselves in the best way that we can. But those things are going to happen. So it is, again, it's something I really like about telehealth is the kind of increased intimacy that we get to see from our clients' homes and being in their space and that comfortability they can gain. Right? I'm not turning my camera on. No, I'm not doing this. Right? Yeah, it happens. Right? Sometimes no, it's different if it won't work. Right? There's times that it's not working and we troubleshoot the technology that way and we improvise and we join by phone. But if they're just not turning it on, right? Or I've had clients who love to turn it on and off. Again, we can default back to that I can see you game, right? Oh, your camera went blank. I can't see you, right? I can default first to that it was an accident, right? Sometimes they're kind of testing boundaries there. We want to think first, is this therapeutic? When we think about play therapy and the themes of play therapy, right? We want to start there first in this behavior, right? Are we searching for power and control? Are we hiding? Are we doing something we shouldn't be doing, right? Are we testing limits and boundaries? We want to start to assess what that possible theme may be. As we know in play therapy, we don't set limits until we need them, right? But we may need to assess, do we need to set a limit here? And what might that look like? And I do a lot of wondering or noticing as we do in play, right? I wonder if you're worried I might see something, right? Or I notice that when we start talking about dad, you always turn your camera off, right? Like, I'm just going to be super curious about that behavior. We can do some scavenger hunt type activities are one of my favorite ways to try and re-engage clients if they won't turn their camera on, right? Because it gives them some autonomy here as well, right? They get a lot of autonomy in our in-person playrooms. I want to give them as much autonomy as I can via telehealth as well. So again, I'm going to assess the theme potentially behind the behavior, set that limit if I need to. I'm going to wonder or notice about that behavior. And then I'm going to try and re-engage them. So maybe they're looking for some items that represent their week, right? I wonder if you could run around your room and you could find 3 things that might tell me a little bit about your week this week or your day, right? And adapt that to anything we need it to be in the moment. Or, I wonder, okay, you don't have to show me your face, right? But I wonder if you could find an item that shows me why you don't want to turn on your camera, right? It's looking, and they might go grab, I've got a picture of my kids here, right? They might grab a picture of their brother, right? I'm mad at my brother and I don't want you to see my angry face, right? Or, whatever it may be. So something to kind of engage them in a discussion about why they won't turn on that camera. If we're looking for some other just kind of, okay, like, I wonder today if we could play some scavenger hunt games, right? Maybe they don't want to sit and look at me today, but if I can get them to turn it on a little bit, right? Then I can go from there. And this link here, we'll see if this one will open, is a fabulous source of all things scavenger hunts, again, from Anne Meehan, because she's awesome. And she has a ton of free printables, but she has these scavenger hunts broken down into all sorts of categories. So mindfulness, gratitude, self-esteem, nature, emotions, right? And so looking at what are my goals with this client? What is our current treatment plan? Okay, they're not turning on their camera for me, and maybe they don't want me to see their face today. Maybe they're sad, but maybe I can get them to do a scavenger hunt and they could go run around their room and find something that shows me happy, right? Or something that shows me mad. And maybe, just maybe, they'll turn on their camera to do it, right? So I might be able to get it in there. So I left those there because I think she, again, does a great job at doing the work, right? And I'm a big fan of not reinventing the wheel if we don't have to. So there's some great guides for scavenger hunts there. What if they run out of their room, right? This happens too. And so again, going back to our safety planning and our policies before the session, what's our plan, right? Is this a child who there is some safety with trusting if they run out of the room, they'll come back, right? Are they running out of the room to go get something? Are they running out of the room because they need to go to the restroom and they just didn't tell us, or whatever that may be? Can I still hear them, right? Can I figure that out? What's my plan for reconnecting with them? And how would I re-engage at the office, right? What if they ran out of the room at the office? What would I do, right? So again, thinking about what's the theme of that behavior. How would I handle this if they were in my playroom? Do I need to set a limit, right? Which may sound something like, you've run out of the room 3 times today, and choosing to leave the room is choosing to end the session. And then we have to be all done with our time together today. But what's the function? Are they doing something they don't want you to see, right? So like, if I think of playrooms, right, we may have tents in our playroom. We may have tables in our playrooms where kids hide under or crawl under. I used to have 2 innocuous looking chairs that kids would always go behind, right? And thinking of the theme of, is this attachment building? Do they want to see if I'll find them, right? Are they running out of the room to test if I care enough to notice that they're out of the room, right? And so really thinking about how we would address those behaviors in the office, and doing it very similarly, but making sure we've got those safety plans in place to connect with the parents and caregivers if they don't return to the room, so that we can ensure that they're safe as well, because I don't know where they go when they leave the room. We do often need to use more verbal communication than typical, right? So depending on the camera setup, depending on our functionality, we lose out on some of that nonverbal communication, right? If I am super anxious right now, you guys might see me fidget a little, but you're not seeing if my foot is shaking, right? You're not seeing what my hands are doing at all times. So we lose some of that awareness. We might have to use more show me, right? So I've got a kid, they're doing something, and all of a sudden they're talking, right? And they're over here and they're like, oh, show me that, right? Show me. And helping them again, re-engage and using some of those verbal cues that we wouldn't necessarily have to do in the playroom in the same way, because we would be able to track both verbally and physically, right? I can do some physical tracking in the playroom that I can't do, right? I can't reposition them on screen to see what they're doing if they turn their backs towards me. We're still using that reflection, that empathy, that wondering, right? We're doing that same verbal tracking, perhaps even more so via telehealth, to let them know, I can see you, right? Going back, I can see you. I see you, I hear you. And I'm engaged with you even via the screen. But balance, right? We're doing a lot of work, right? And there's a great article here. Again, it's linked at the end, but it just talks about a different energy, right? So it talks about the changes in a therapeutic relationship. It's a long scholarly article, so if you want to read it, please do. But it really breaks down that balance, that transition piece to 3 key categories, right? And I thought that as I read through this, I was like, yes, right? That yes. 100% you've got it. And it talks about, like, let's just acknowledge this is a remote relationship. It's a relationship, 100%, right? Working with kids via telehealth is a relationship. It's remote. And the three subcategories of that theme is that there's losses, right? And there's three kind of types of losses that providers talk about when they think about the remoteness of the relationship. And one of those is intangible losses, right? So and that kind of goes back to why telehealth wasn't super explored pre-COVID, right? Until you twisted all of our arms and said, you have to do this or not see clients. Well, we wanted to do it, right? Because there was just this intangible sense of like, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to lose something, right? I'm just going to lose a part of the relationship, and I may not be able to exactly describe that, but it's there, right? And that's still something that's recognized and absolutely valid of like, there's just a piece of it, right? There's just something intangible that just isn't there. And there's specific losses, right? So we've talked about, we lose some of that body language piece. We lose the eye contact, right? Even staring at the screen, like depending on where my camera is set up, right? If I move my Zoom, all of a sudden it looks like I'm not looking at you, right? So I might still even be looking in your direction, but you may not feel that the same way, which is why going back to earlier when it says put yourself on screen is so important, because I might think, oh, I'm looking right at my camera, but if my screen moves over here, right, and now I'm trying to look at you because this is where my thing is, it looks like I'm not, right? So we want to be really mindful of how we present to help minimize and mitigate those specific losses like the eye contact, the body language, and the increased distractions, right? It's just inevitable. Like there's especially as we make those transitions, there's going to be things that we're not used to. What time does the garbage truck drive by? We have a provider who I have a meeting with her every month. Without fail, that is the time and day every month that the tornado sirens go off at her house, which is fine. I know that I'm self-regulated enough, but if I was a client who was experiencing trauma due to the derecho or another natural disaster, and I heard those the first couple of times, and that might derail my session. And that's just a nuance of her being at her house and not at the office. And then just the perception of loss, right? Just the fact, I'm on the screen, right? Like, it's just that I'm losing something. However, coming from that, one of the things that really stood out in this research is that the connection can stay strong. And so when we talked earlier about, yes, telehealth can be effective, working with kids online can be effective. We know from a research standpoint that connection can stay strong. And there's some reasons for that. At the peak of the pandemic, one of those reasons was because safety was valued as a primary benefit. And providers talked a lot about, I would rather know that I'm safe and that my clients are safe, and I would rather meet safely and see as much of them as possible than utilize a mask in session. There was a strong preference in this article to see someone's facial expressions rather than be in person and behind a mask. The increased comfort, right? You're comfortable as a client, and so you're perhaps engaging even more with. We talked about that intimacy piece, right? Of seeing their homes. I've seen parts of clients, I've seen family members of clients, I've seen, access to clients' houses that I never would know about if they were meeting with me at the office. And just the endurance of relationships. Like, we can do hard things, right? We can make these transitions, and we can make this relationship last and still meet your therapeutic needs, even via the modality. The biggest for me, though, is just the recognition that it's taxing, right? Like we talked about, Zoom fatigue is real. You are working harder than ever, right? I did my doctoral work at an online institution, and this was years ago, right? And I remember telling people, like, I wish I could make people see that online work is hard, right? There was this misconception of like, yeah, you did it online, it was no big deal. And I was like, no, because I had to go to these things, right? I would go to in-person residencies and be so relieved to be in the same room as my professors. I was like, I would day, right? Like, this is how my master's program was. It was in person. It was fine. That was easy. And so recognizing that as providers now, and as providers working with kids online, like, holy cow, right? Like, it's exhausting, right? So just validating for yourself and your colleagues, like, yeah, it's hard, right? It's absolutely effective. It's absolutely beneficial. there are some really great benefits, but we don't have to pretend that it's like this easy, like you're at home, so you're not working situation. No, you're working harder than ever. And you're also learning to set limits, right? Again, some of those benefits of, hey, it's accessible and we can have additional hours and we can do this does not mean that we do so at the risk of your own self-care, right? And so learning to set limits and still work within work hours, whatever those may be for you, and not feel that pull of like, well, I could just log on and do this session at this time that I wouldn't do if I wasn't at the office. Like being mindful of those boundaries and still instilling those boundaries for yourself, which leads to wrapping things up today, right? And looking at how do we make sure that you're engaging in self-care, right? And I went to a training again a couple of weeks ago, and she was calling it care of self, right? And she's like, that's why it's on here, right? Creating care for self. She's like, self-care is just such a buzzword. It's gross, right? Like self-care is easy to say. Nobody's really doing it. So I stole this from her because I just thought it was really powerful. She's like, no, like care of self, care for self, self-care is not a phrase I'm using anymore. I threw a self-care assessment on here. Let me open this up. We're going to go through this kind of in our last few minutes here, because I do think that it's really important that we do accurate reflections. I make my supervisees engage in self-care and all sorts of assessments on where they're at. This assessment, again, if you guys are able to pull it up and can go through it, fine. Otherwise, even if you're not able, if you want to do a scratch piece of paper and take note, or just be thinking about it mentally as we go through, it breaks things down into some areas of self-care. And I want you to think about how often you're engaging in these things, right? So it gives us that rating scale of 1 to 5, 5 being frequently, 4 occasionally, 3 rarely, 2 never, 1 like it never occurred to me. Didn't realize that was something I could do or should do. So again, you can jot these down as we go, or just kind of be taking mental note, and you can access this this later as well. But here, right? So how often are you eating regularly, right? Actually eating breakfast, lunch, dinner, like meals throughout the day. How often are you choosing to eat healthy or exercise? How often are you getting regular medical care for prevention and getting medical care when you need it? How often are you taking time off when it's needed or when you want it, right? That's what I would add. When you want it, how often are you taking time off? Getting massages or other forms of like bodily care. Engaging in physical activity that's fun, right? Dancing, swimming, walking, running, singing. Taking time to have strong sexual health with yourself, with a partner, getting enough sleep, wearing clothes that you like, vacations or day trips or mini vacations, taking time away from your phone or computers or tablets, right? Or anything else related to physical self-care, right? Drinking enough water, right? Hydrating, psychological self-care, right? Are you engaging in self-reflection? Are you going to therapy, journaling, reading, right? Not work reading, fun reading, whatever fun is for you, in at which you are not an expert or in charge. Side note on this one, right? Like we have meetings at work, and we started rotating who has to lead those meetings. And it's broken down all that, like it's once a year, maybe, that I have to lead them. And my favorite days are meeting days where charge that month, right? Like it's somebody else. I go to the meetings, I love being there, but just that break from having to be the one in charge of that can be super great for self-care. Decreasing stress in your life, letting others know different aspects of you, right? Do your colleagues know anything about you that isn't work related, right? And that doesn't mean they need to know everything, right? But you are a whole human, right? Not just a work human. Paying attention to your own inner experiences. What are you thinking? What are your beliefs, your attitudes, your values? In your intelligence in a new area, right? What have you learned lately? Practice receiving from others, right? A lot of us in this field aren't good at that, right? What have you let somebody else do for you lately? Be curious and say no to extra responsibilities, right? What's that saying? Like no is a complete sentence. right? Again, a lot of us aren't in this field because we're really good at that, right? A lot of us got here because we're not so good at saying no, especially when it comes to helping people. Spending time with people that you like being around, staying in contact with important people in your life, saying nice things to yourself, loving yourself, rereading favorite books or reviewing favorite movies. There's a strong power in that, right? Especially when we're stressed out. If you've ever talked to somebody who's like, oh, I just rewatched this show for the 100th time. It's because there's a safety in that. A lot of my clients will rewatch certain shows or have that background noise because there's a comfort in that. Identify what your comforting activities or places are. Crying, laughing, advocating, right? What are you upset about right now? What can you do about it? How can you do that effectively? Playing with kids, right? Not work kids. Like, work kids are great, right? But like getting time outside of work, again, reflecting, being in nature, making spiritual connections, feeling inspired, finding a sense of optimism, right? We can lose that so quickly here. Being aware of non-material aspects, again, not being in charge for a moment, knowing it's okay to not know, figuring out what's important and meaningful to you and where's that at in your life. Engaging in meditation or prayer, singing, again, more time with kids. They're pretty powerful. You guys know that you're at a play therapy training. New experiences, right? If you believe in something, do something about it. During the workday, right? If you take nothing away, this one, take a break during the workday, right? Give yourself permission for lunch. When COVID first started and everybody was at home, we initiated a self-care policy, if you will, where I said, okay, you guys are going to need to step away from the screen. So for 1 hour every day, I want you to block your day for self-care. I want to know when it is, not because I care when it is, but because I don't want to bug you during that. If you're going to go in your garage and work out, if you're going to go for a walk, if you're going to take a nap, if you're going to do whatever, I don't want you to feel like you owe me time during that time. And so being mindful of what are you giving yourself, and what does that look like? Are you taking walks in between clients? Are you making sure you're eating? Chat with coworkers, right? You guys are real people. You can have real conversations, but also giving yourself quiet time to get things done. Identify projects that are exciting or things you want to be projects. Limit setting, right? With work, with colleagues and clients. Balance your caseload. Again, you guys are play therapists, right? I love kids. I love play therapy. I don't want 9 highly intense play therapy clients back to back 5 days a week, right? Like, make time to space those out, add in some, sprinkle in some adults, sprinkle in something, right? Because we are only as good as we have the capacity to be because of our levels of burnout, right? So making sure we keep ourselves strong and healthy and good for our clients by setting those boundaries. We're doing ourselves and our clients a favor by saying no sometimes. Make sure your workspace is comfortable. So your telehealth space as well, right? I want you to be just as excited about coming down to that. I say down because I work in the basement, right? But coming to that space as you are about going to the office. Getting supervision and consultation. If you're doing primarily telehealth, make sure that you have a way to connect with someone, even if you are fully licensed, right? I do check-ins every week for an hour with my supervisees that don't need licensure, right? Hey, you're home, I'm home. I can't just pop in your office every day and say, hey, how are you? I want you to know you have a designated time every week to come talk to me and see my face. And so making sure you guys are advocating for that if you're not getting it, and negotiating your needs, and have an area of interest that isn't trauma and work related, right? So finding that balance among work, right? So all really important things. Reflect on these for yourselves, you guys, you deserve it. And I want you to learn how to take tech breaks, right? Set your phone aside for dinner, get your phone off your nightstand. I can say that like I do it. I don't. It's right there, right? But I wish it wasn't. And so setting a goal for yourself to increase those non-screen time activities, right? And learn to be bored. Like, it's okay for us to be bored. I was laughing the other night because we were watching TV as a family. And then the second, like, the 2-minute ad on Hulu would come up, everybody picked up their phone. And it was like, we can't even watch ads anymore without being on our phone. Like, learn to just be bored. So yes, I want to make sure you guys are taking care of yourselves as well. There's some references there. I appreciate all of you joining me today. If anybody here or knows anybody not here that's looking, we are also hiring for therapists and VHIS providers. So if anybody wants to come join this awesome team, you can have them reach out to me as well. You guys should all receive the post-test. I will resend that just to make sure, but most of you, it should have come through in an email already. You can fill that out. Once that is filled out, I will send out your CEU certificates. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'll send these slides out as well. But any questions I can answer this morning. I appreciate all of you being here. If anybody, oh, go ahead. No, maybe not. Okay. I'm going to stop recording. But yes, I appreciate all of you being here. And thank you so much. Like I said, if you need anything, please email me and reach out. Otherwise, I will. Still screen sharing. Yes, I appreciate all of you. And we'll have some more training soon. So I think there's a spot on the eval that says if you want to be on the listserv for trainings that you can submit your email. The evals are anonymous. So if you don't want to put it on there, but you want to be on the listserv, I totally understand that. Just send me a separate email and just say, I want more play therapy trainings. And so, yeah, thank you all. Go enjoy the rest of your Friday.
Thank you for joining in on today's training. We look forward to having you join us again. Heart & Solutions is proud to provide CE eligible trainings for our counseling community. This training may be eligible for continuing education credit hours through either the National Board for Certified Counselors, provider number 7376, or the Association of Play Therapy, provider number 21-645. To obtain CE hours for today's training, be sure to follow the steps in the description below.